It was Zeb. There was so much to tell, and he whispered he had something to tell me privately. When he was sure we were alone, he took from his trunk a long, flat box. Inside was the most wonderful shirt I have ever seen. It looked like a cross between a nightshirt and a shirtwaist. It was of homespun linen. The bosom was ruffled and tucked, all done by hand. Such tiny stitches, such patience and skill. Then he handed me an old daguerreotype. I unfastened the little golden hook, and inside was a face good to see and to remember. It was dim, yet clear in outline, just as if she were looking out from the mellow twilight of long ago. The sweet, elusive smile. I couldn't tell where it was, whether it was the mouth or the beautiful eyes that were smiling. All that was visible of her dress was the Dutch collar. It was pinned with an ugly old brooch, which Zebby said was a breastpin. He had given it to her. Under the glass on the other side was a strand of faded hair and a slip of paper. The writing on the paper was so faded it was scarce readable, but it said, Pauline Gorley, aged 22, 1860. Next he showed me a note, written by Pauline, simply worded, but it held a world of meaning for Zebby. It said, I spun and wove this cloth at Adeline's, enough for me a dress and you a shirt, which I made. It is for the wedding, else to be buried in. Yours, Pauline. The shirt, the picture, and the note had waited for him all these years in Mothy's care, and now I will tell you the story. Long, long ago, someone did something to someone else and started a feud. Unfortunately, the Gorleys were on one side and the Parkers on the other. That it all happened before either Zebby or Pauline were born was no difference. A Gorley must hate a Parker always, as always a Parker must hate a Gorley. Pauline was the only girl, and she had a regiment of big brothers who gloried in the warfare and wanted only the slightest pretext to shoot a Parker. So they grew up, and Zebby often met Pauline at the quiltings and other gatherings at the homes of non-partisans. He remembers her so perfectly and describes her so plainly that I can picture her easily. She had brown eyes and hair. She used to ride about on her sorrel palfrey. She wore a pink calico sunbonnet, and Zebby says she was just like the pink hollyhocks that grew by her mother's window. Isn't that a sweet picture? Her mother and the father were both dead, and she and her brothers lived on their plantation. Zebby had never dared speak to her until one day he had driven over with his mother and sisters to a dinner given on a neighboring plantation. He was standing outside near the wall, when someone dropped a spray of apple blossoms down upon him from an upper window. He looked up, and Pauline was leaning out smiling at him. After that, he made a point to frequent places where he might expect her. She was a loyal little soul, and would not desert, although he urged her to, even promising her to go away, plumb away, clean, to Scott County if she would go. She told him that her brothers would go even as far as that to kill him, so that they must wait and hope. Finally, Zebby got tired of waiting, and one day he boldly rode up to the Gorley home and formally asked for Pauline's hand. The bullet he got for his presumption kept him from going to war with his father and brother when they marched away. Some time later, George Gorley was shot and killed from ambush, and although Zebby had not yet left his bed, the Gorleys believed he did it. And one night Pauline came through a heavy rainstorm with only Caesar to warn Zebby and to beg him for her sake to get away as fast as he could that night. She pleaded that she could not live if he were killed, and could never marry him if he killed her brothers, so she persuaded him to go while they were all innocent. Well, he did as she wished, and they never saw each other again. He never went home again until last Thanksgiving, and dear little Pauline had been dead for years. She herself had taken her little gifts for Zebby to Mothie to keep for him. Some years later she died and was buried in the dress she mentioned. It was woven at Adeline Carter's, one of the bitterest enemies of the Gorleys, but the sacrifice of her pride did her no good because she was long at rest before Zebby knew. He had been greatly grieved because no stone marked her grave, only a tangle of rose-briars. So he bought a stone, and in the night before Decoration Day, he and two of Uncle Buck's grandsons went to the Gorley burying ground and raised it to the memory of sweet Pauline. Some of the Gorleys still lived there, so he came home at once, fearing if they should find out who placed the stone above their sister, they would take vengeance on his poor frail body. After he had finished telling me his story, I felt just as I used to when grandmother opened the big chest to air her wedding clothes and the dress each of her babies wore when baptized. It seemed almost like smelling the lavender and rose leaves, and it was with reverent fingers that I folded the shirt and the work of love yellow with age and laid it in the box. Zebby was silent, but presently he threw a handful of pebbles down the canyon wall. I am not sorry Pauline is dead. I have never shed a tear. I know you think that is odd, but I have never wanted to mourn. I am glad that it is as it is. I am happy and at peace because I know she's mine. The little breeze is Pauline's own voice. She had a little caressing way, just like the gentlest breeze when it stirs your hair. There's something in everything that brings back Pauline, the beauty of the morning, the song of a bird, or the flash of its wings. The flowers look like she did. So I have not lost her. She's mine more than ever. I have always felt so, but was never quite sure until I went back and saw where they laid her. I knew people think I'm crazy, but I don't care for that. I shall not hate to die. When you get to be as old as I am, child, everything will have a new meaning to you. I shall never forget Zebby as I last saw him. I looked back and saw him standing on the cliffs, high above us, the early morning sun turning his snowing hair to gold, the breeze fingers of Pauline tossing the scanty locks. I shall always remember him so, a living monument to a dead past.